All right, it actually has been a couple of weeks. I have been busy as hell and have not had a chance, but this is going to be a great episode. I have Steve Lavine with me from LevelField. I have Michelle Duncan with me from Living Blue in Texas. And I'm going to round up the episode and explain what in the world I've been up to over the past month or two here. And we'll get into it here. So, Steve, you found me on, was it Twitter? Or how did you actually find me originally there?
Sure. Hey, Robert. So I have been working with people in a bunch of different states for LevelField, which I'll talk about in a minute. And the way that I have ended up meeting most people is I'm finding people that I'm already working with who have a lot of followers on social media, Twitter, for example. And then I can see who follows them. And it's very easy to see online that people are connected. And you have a podcast and you tweet, and I've been working with people in Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, and then we started coming to Georgia. And when I came to Georgia, I came across you. I was really just looking for people who had interesting blogs and podcasts and might find what we were doing interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And if remind me, because I did an episode with the guys out in Iowa, the podcast there, and one of the guys is a tech guy. And make sure we follow up and give those guys a shout out. They have a very interesting liberal podcast that we probably should connect with if you haven't already.
Yeah, that sounds great. We've been working with a bunch of great people in Iowa, and it's so interesting up there because obviously they have the first caucuses that happen, and Iowa is such an important state. So it's a small state population-wise, but I think they have a lot of importance, and everybody you speak to has politics on the brain, which for me is great because I'm the same way.
Yeah, and one of my friends of 20 years, he's actually coming over for dinner tonight, and we're cooking tacos, but he is from Iowa, and he is liberal like us, and I actually sent him that episode when I recorded, because I wasn't sure those guys originally when I spoke to them, where they were, and then he said, oh, we're from Iowa, we're from the cornfields of Iowa, and I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a perfect match for my friend, that's coming over tonight, so I'm glad you guys are working there. But the one question I remember from that podcast episode that we did, and I'll send you the link to it. He asked me, he says, what do you guys have in Georgia that we don't have in Iowa? And I said, Stacey Abrams. And he virtually nodded and agreed to it. And we also have the black vote here in Georgia. You look around Iowa, you don't see many black people. And that is a very key thing that has, flipped Georgia blue for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I mean, Stacey Abrams is really making a huge impact in Georgia, especially where voting rights are concerned. I mean, it seems to me like she's almost single-handedly putting Georgia at the center of that entire debate, right?
For sure. Actually, we just moved over to the east side of Metro Atlanta in Tucker, and I made sure to keep her her governor's sign. She is not announced yet. Everybody keeps wondering what in the world she's going to do, but I still have her Stacey Abrams for governor sign, and I don't know if I'm going to part with it, but it's sitting out in the garage right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is just watching and waiting to see where she's going to go in the next couple of years, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then the other question, I don't know that we have actually spoken about it, but why, Steve, are you doing what you're doing?
I've always thought that politics in America, sometimes you get years where things seem to fall into shape, and then sometimes you get periods of time where the system just seems broken. And it seems hard to argue, in my opinion, that we're not in one of those worst times right now, right? I mean, America has gone through tough times in the past where we've been really polarized and people can't talk to one another about anything political without, without coming to blows practically. But it feels like that's what's happening now. But what's worse right now is the extent to which big money seems to be dominating the conversation. And, I don't want to get too much into all the legal details, more than I have to, but the laws have changed a lot over the last couple of years. You may have heard of Citizens United, which is an important legal decision by the Supreme Court that changed the law where the ability to raise money for and spend money on elections and candidates has been concerned. And big money has just gained so much influence over the last couple of years that for a while I've been saying to myself, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to shift some of this power away from the big money and more towards grassroots? And I think that a combination of the right developments technically, plus an ability to change the way that people are using the system because of the way that micro donations have come into their own, micro influencers have started to come into their own, it made me say, the time is right. I can see a way to change things here in order to give the little guy a lot more influence and power in politics and make it so that it's not just the big guys running the show. That's just always been something I've wanted to do.
Yeah, for sure. And certainly, Michelle, you in Texas, you actually have a bigger following than I do. Will, that we were talking about, that lives in Austin right now, he did a number of episodes. You can go back and find those. But he's certainly, a liberal like us. But he kind of bowed out. He's got some other. I think he's going to actually go to grad school. Was one of the biggest reasons that he kind of stepped out of the arena. But I think you certainly know, what we're talking about here. So I'll let you introduce yourself there out in Texas, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So, my name is Michelle Davis, and I am the editor and blogger of Living Blue in Texas, which is livingbluetx.com. And so, I do have a little bit more followers on Twitter, but most of my following is on Facebook. And I just came out with a book, Dixie Gops, DIXIE-GOPS, and it's the untold story of the Dixiecrat Republican Coalition. So really excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned earlier that you live near Dallas, was it?
I do. I live right on the outskirts of Dallas.
Gotcha. And you're, I'm going to check to see if my aunt is one of your followers. She certainly is one of us, but she lives in Carrollton, I believe.
Yeah, Carrollton's not far.
So I'll double check to see. And then my former company was based in Austin, and I remember following, their struggles and my like-minded coworkers and everything they're going through. And the amazing stuff that your legislatures in Texas are doing, they're literally leaving the state. So there's not a quorum for the crazy stuff the Republicans are up to out there. Right.
Well, I mean, they really didn't have a choice. That is something that they are allowed to do within the House rules, and they had the numbers to break the quorum, but they didn't have the numbers to block the bill. So they were kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. We had a regular session earlier this year, and they blocked some bad voting rights bills at that time. And then our genius governor called a special session just to push these terrible bills through. And, thank God for them, because otherwise, I mean, we would just be totally railroaded with that, new abortion restrictions, anti-CRT, all the Republican wish list stuff. So our governor right now is saying that he's going to call another special session as soon as they get back. So we'll see what happens.
So where did they all go to for exile from Texas?
They are in Washington, D.C. and they are working. They are lobbying the senators to pass the For the People Act, to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They've been out there protesting. They've been working really hard. Matter of fact, one of the state legislators, along with one of our congressmen, just got arrested today at a voting rights protest in front of the Supreme Court.
And
a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that draws a parallel here to Georgia with Park Cannon, when Kemp here in Georgia was signing the same similar. It's almost like it was rinse and repeat. They were going from state to state. They obviously know they are losing, so what do? They just rewrite the laws so they can try to win again. So,
right. Well, we're both in southern states. We're both south of the Mason-Dixon. I think you guys are a little bit, deep south, where we're kind of like borderline southwest. But this is the same tactics that they've used for 150 years.
Yeah. But you have Park Cannon here, and she's actually on my to-do list. If I can find 30 minutes in my busy schedule to call Park Cannon and connect with her. I've met her before, but she was arrested here in Georgia. The charges were dropped because they were just stupid. All she did was knock on the door while they were, hiding behind the door, signing a stupid bill so that they can try to stay in power.
I remember the video.
Yeah, but these are the links that Republicans are holding on to, the little ounce of power they have left, and it's not working. If you look at what has happened in Georgia, and Steve, remember I told you that Reverend Warnock has to run again because all he has left is just the rest of Johnny Isaac's Senate term here.
Sure. It's the regular election. The first one was a special election, correct?
Right. And so we don't know what Stacey Abrams is going to do, and that is what it is. There's a rumor going around that it may be Jason Carter, who I believe is Jimmy Carter's grandson, may run for governor here in Georgia. We'll see. That's not official. That's a rumor going around. I don't want to start any... whatever. But imagine Reverend Warnock for Senate for another 6 years and Jason Carter with that name on the ticket if, Stacey decides not to run here. It is only going to be more interesting as we get into this fall and into the next election year.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can argue that Georgia wasn't really the pivotal state in terms of deciding control of the Senate for one thing, right? And thereby control of the agenda and Biden's ability to execute on it. So I think Georgia is really at the center of the world right now, at least from my point of view.
Yeah. And as we were talking, Biden is on TV live, and he's talking about the vaccination progress. I was actually in a store yesterday here in Metro Atlanta, and I was talking to folks because I got Moderna months ago. Moderna did what it was supposed to do, but I actually tested positive. I had one of the breakthrough cases, and Moderna did what it was supposed to do. I did not want to have COVID without the vaccine. And who would have known? Any ounce of credit that we could have given to that crazy Trump administration, that they did all of that stuff to have the vaccine ready for us, that put us in the situation that we are in. But why are folks walking around right now hemming and hawing about getting the vaccine?
Robert, you told me, I think, I spoke to you when you were sick with that breakthrough case. And if I remember correctly, you told me you'd had 2 shots of Moderna, you were fully vaccinated, but you were as sick as you've ever been. Was it a pretty bad illness for you?
Oh, yeah. I was out of work for several days. I had to, between the 2 big health systems here, Wellstar and Piedmont, one doctor got mad at me for asking for the treatment they gave Trump for the monoclonal antibodies, versus the other, Piedmont, my doctor, no questions asked. It was still a bit of drama. The health systems, because the health because of all the lobbyists and all the money in healthcare in this country is so messed up. There was a friend of mine, her mom also had a breakthrough case, and her doctor didn't even know about the antibody treatment that Trump got. Why in 2021, with allegedly the best healthcare in the world, do we have to still deal with this BS?
Were you able to get that treatment?
I did, but it was still drama. In one health system, the doctor got mad at me for asking about it. The other health system, no questions asked, but it was rescheduled 3 times. But allegedly, we have the best health care in the world.
And what would you say that? What would you say it was like? I mean, did it feel like it was worse than the flu to you? Was it like the worst flu you ever had, or was it really pretty mild, just like a bad summer cold?
It was the cough that was ridiculous. There was one night that the cough was nonstop. I was ready to go to the ER, and finally it settled down. The fever was never bad, thankfully. It was mostly the cough. But
that was after you had the monoclonal antibodies, is that right?
Before, because it took them so long to get it scheduled and rescheduled.
Got it. Wow.
But yeah, it was not anything I'd wish on anybody. And here we have Lindsey Graham, flip-flop Lindsey in South Carolina has tested positive because, I guess he got the vaccine. We're kind of going on a tangent, but, we're in this situation because you have people, and I'm going to get to him in a second, my former Congressman Barry Loudermilk, he didn't even vaccinate his children. One of his former town halls, because he says so much stupid stuff, he admitted in a town hall growing up that he did not vaccinate his children. That kind of stuff has life and death consequences, the BS that comes out of these Republicans' mouths.
Yeah.
Wow, so they didn't even get what is it called, measles, mumps, rubella, polio, all that kind of thing?
No, he homeschooled them.
Wow.
And Barry Loudermilk, District 11 here in Georgia, guess who's he right next door to? Marjorie Taylor Greene. But Barry Loudermilk, the people surrounding him, I guess, he is a little, air quotes, smarter, that he doesn't even do town halls anymore because it's so embarrassing, the stuff that comes out of his mouth. For example, also, he claims that Russians helped Jimmy Carter get into the White House. So why do people continue to vote for these idiots like Barry Loudermilk and Marjorie Taylor Greene? I wasn't raised like that. I would go to school, I've actually taught college before. Kennesaw State University actually fired me because I was too liberal for Kennesaw State University. Now the second largest university, my alma mater, fired me because I guess I was too liberal for that school in my former district.
Yeah. Do you see the tides shifting in your part of Georgia there? Do you feel like it's really becoming, red to purple, maybe to blue?
Oh, certainly. I moved to Cobb County in 2003 from South Georgia, and Cobb County was ruby red. Cobb County was known, and you can read the articles about Cobb County, Georgia, rich Bush Republicans galore. And they were known for low taxes. If you wanted to build a big house and live in, Cobb County and northwest Atlanta and be a Republican, that was your haven. Last I looked, pretty much over half the county is now blue. They voted for Hillary. They have actually one of the gentlemen that ran against Barry Loudermilk 2 races ago is now the Democratic District Attorney, black man. For all intents and purposes, Cobb County is blue. The Republicans stupidly lost that county. They could have kept it. But all of these antics and the stupid, people getting in bed with people like Trump, this is what they get.
Yeah, I've heard that there's something going on in the Cobb County School District, too, about the curriculum. I mean, it sounds to me like it's really a place that's in the process of changing in a big way. at a minimum, it's a place that used to be solidly red, where now people are really battling it out to see where it's going. Right?
Oh yeah. There was a very nice lady. The development behind our former home that we're about to sell, because we moved over to the east side of town, into a much more blue district over here, and we just spent a lot of time in this part of town. It just happened, and we're going to sell that home over on the west side of town. And by the way, we were gerrymandered into Barry Loudermilk's District 11. We were literally across the street from District 6, Lucy McBass District, by the way. So Barry Loudermilk got me, but it was because he chose to gerrymander that District 11, by the way. So I want to point that out. But the development behind our former home over there, it was an old school, Brumby Elementary School. And that's a whole other story for another time. But the school building had been built back in like the 50s, and the school system decided to sell it for that parcel of land. And the one lady on the school board at the time, she admittedly, I'd call her a Bush Republican, but very nice. She would sit down, have a cup of coffee with you. She returned my phone call. I only asked her, I said, what did the school system sell that elementary school for? In that transaction. But we talked a little bit longer, and at the time, there was a gentleman running for governor, and Kemp ended up beating him and going on to be our unfortunate governor. I can't remember but at the time, he was my state senator. And you and I have talked about Jen Jordan, who was my former state senator now. Jen Jordan beat him, and actually he's no longer, state senator and not in politics anymore. But he wouldn't return my calls. Republicans, if you disagree with them, they just find a way to make you disappear. That's their whole strategy. But she didn't. She actually, sorry.
No, go on ahead.
Yeah. So, but she returned my call, and she says, I'm not running for re-election. This is insanity that is going on in this county, and I'm fed up with it. I'm tired of it. But this is a Bush Republican that was on the school board, I assume some sort of lifelong educator, throwing her hands up and says, I'm not dealing with this anymore.
Well, I can see that. I was just going to say, I think Barry Loudermilk is going to regret the day he ever gerrymandered you into his district, Robert, because I think he picked the wrong guy to put in his district if he wants to stay in office. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. And so our campaign actually was a friend of mine. He started the Facebook page. It's called Bounce Barry Loudermilk. And so we agreed to make that our campaign. It has another arm. I did a bit of work with Indivisible GA11, and I have approached them. I hope we partner together. And we have ran billboards before. And one of the faces of that campaign as well in the past has been, quote, we're too poor to vote Republican. And next to the Republican was the old Russian USSR hammer and sickle, because of course the Russians loved the Republicans when Trump was in office, and none of the Republicans would say anything bad about Russia. But I remember the billboard company, and Steve, I shared the contact with you because the billboard salesman that we worked with was with Link, and now he's with the Trailhead Media. He's actually with a bigger billboard company now. And I remember a phone call that he called me one day. He says, Robert, I think you would appreciate this phone call. There was a lady that we had this billboard running near her subdivision. And it was, again, we're too poor to vote Republican. And she says, you need to take that billboard down right now. That is embarrassing my community. And they responded and said, ma'am, I'm sorry, that's not how this works. That's the billboard's paid for.
Wow. And so you're talking with them about taking out some billboards for the Bounce Barry campaign, is that it?
Yes, and we've already started scouting them. They start at $200 a month. That's all we need to get this up and running. And Barry, as we talked about earlier, decides to draw his gerrymandered districts into the rural part of the state. Guess what's cheap in rural parts of Georgia? Billboards.
Right.
Starting at around $200 a month. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see a billboard in the middle of rural Georgia with his office phone number telling people to call him and ask him why he didn't vaccinate his children.
Yeah, well, I think that as long as it's got the URL for your campaign, bouncebarry.levelfield.net, I think that is going to make an even bigger difference because, I mean, I think what you want to do, Robert, is really to start putting a war chest together to make sure he doesn't win re-election, right?
Yeah, because if you look at the numbers, this is public info that we're sharing with you. You can go to fec.gov. You can see all the history of everything that we're talking about here and the previous campaigns that we've worked with. Barry Loudermilk only got 60% of the vote the last time around. Dana Barrett gave him a hell of a fight. Marjorie Taylor Greene got 85% of the vote in her much more ruby red district in northwest Georgia. Guess who's easier to beat?
Right. I mean, it sounds to me like you think he can be beaten, huh?
Yeah. I mean, if you go more to the east in District 6, now this is all going to change, by the way, and the Republicans know this, and I'm sure, Michelle, and this may be happening out in Texas, are they redrawing the districts out there too?
That's the plan.
Yeah. So this is all going to be turned upside down, but Barry Loudermilk's not going anywhere anytime soon. You know, he's a career politician, and he doesn't have anything better to do but be a thorn in our side. So he's not going anywhere. It's just that his district's going to look a little different. But they are about to redraw all these districts. And the Republicans control that game. And they know where all the votes are. And they know how to redraw and re-gerrymander. So stay tuned. That's going to happen later this year. Is that the same out in Texas, Michelle?
Right, unless the For the People Act passes, and then if it does, that's the end of racial gerrymandering.
Yeah.
So that's part of the bill that they're pushing right now as one.
Yeah. So we shall see, but it's likely that Republicans are going to get their way. We hope not, but, you know, actually, ironically, the three of us, it probably will be good for our, air quotes, business here because it gives us a hell of a fight and a reason to do what we're doing and to call them out for what they're doing. You know, it's insane. You know, and actually, I had leading up to the recording today, I had MSNBC. I did not know. I believe, if I'm quoting this right, now a fourth officer that was at the Capitol on January 6th committed suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's unbelievable, really. I mean, it's hard to believe that something like this happened in our country and these officers are feeling that much pressure. I mean, it's almost unimaginable for me to think about what they must have gone through.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about it on prior. I've struggled at times with mental health as well, but to be in that situation, not get the support of the people that you're sworn to protect because it's some political stunt.
Right.
These people, there's a special place in hell for them, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think that people have asked me, they said, Robert, why don't you run for office? I said, no, I'm not the right person. I do much better doing the podcasting and the social media stuff and talking about everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're doing more than that. I mean, it sounds like now you're starting to actually get involved in the politics too, huh?
Yeah. Well, I've been involved for years, but yeah, for sure.
Right.
But Michelle, what else you got going on in Texas? I feel like we've been talking way too much over you there.
Well, the biggest thing I have going on right now is my book, which just came out 2 days ago. So it is, in a matter of fact, you were talking about how Republicans were saying Jimmy Carter got elected from Russians. I actually talk about Jimmy Carter's election in my book. So it's the untold story of the Dixiecrat and Republican coalition. After the Dixiecrats left the Democratic Party, a lot of people assumed, well, they just were Democrats. No, they fought against Democrats. They fought against civil rights, and they partnered up with conservative Republicans like Robert Taft and Kerry, escaping my head right now, but they partnered up with several conservative Republicans to block civil rights legislation and block pro-labor legislation in Congress for years. And some names you might be familiar with in Georgia, like Herman Talmadge and George Wallace. They all played a part in political realignment. So, I noticed probably like 3 or 4 years ago that the right started saying the Southern strategy never happened. The Southern strategy was a myth. It never happened.
Oh,
Democrats,
please.
They're racist. They've always been racist, And I think it was started by Ben Shapiro, because I looked and I could find, videos of him back in 2016 saying it never happened, but we've gotten to a point where, and I don't know if you experience this online, but I see this on like every social media channel I have. Trolls basically want to say, hey, by the way, Democrats are the ones that started the KKK. Democrats are the ones that were slavery. Well, that's true. That was conservative Democrats. And conservative Democrats don't exist. I mean, not in our party. I mean, there might be a few. Joe Manchin might be one of them. But we don't have conservative Democrats anymore. And I think that we're in a time of like such polarization for people to comprehend that at one time our parties were not split between conservative and liberal. Our parties were liberal and conservative in each party. So you had very, very liberal, very progressive Republicans at one time, and you had very conservative Democrats. And what basically happened over a period of time was conservatives left the Democratic Party and liberals left the Republican Party until, that they didn't resemble the way that they once were. And so my book basically just tells the story. It was a formal coalition, and this has been, all of Congress journals, and a lot of really big name people were involved in it. Joe McCarthy was part of the coalition. Barry Goldwater was part of the coalition. Herman Talmadge. So they pushed for political realignment for decades, and it finally happened. And now that the right is conservative and the left is liberal, I guess it's always kind of been like that. But Republicans are conservative and Democrats are liberal. I think that especially like younger people my age and younger, have a hard time comprehending that both parties used to host both ideologies. And so if they didn't learn about the Southern strategy, then it's just something that doesn't make sense to them,
Oh, the Southern strategy is still alive and well. And I have a story for you I think you'll appreciate. So my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, he came back and took the Postal Service exam at the time after World War II, passed it, and was a postal carrier his whole life and retired from the Postal Service. But he was a Southern Democrat, and he refused to vote for any Republican. When Nixon and all that craziness was going on in Reagan, he refused to vote for any Republican because they were going to take his Social Security and Medicare away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then his wife,
that's something they pushed. I mean, they pushed that. Republicans pushed that ever since the inception of Social Security and Medicaid. Eventually conservative Democrats just got along with it.
Yeah. But then my grandmother, his wife, just bought right along with the Southern strategy and voted, to cancel his vote out.
Yeah. Well, and that's how it happens. And and I think that another big reason why the party switch or political realignment, or however you want to describe it, took so long, decades and decades, was because in the 40s and the 50s, they were only 1 or 2 generations away from the Civil War. And so, like, when I've gone back and I've read, congressional records and journals, people were still angry over Reconstruction all the way into, like, the 1950s and 1960s. I mean, it took, almost 100 years for there to be enough generations separating, between modern America and the Civil War where they weren't angry over Reconstruction anymore. And so I think that, because what we do and what we don't learn in public schools, especially here in the South, that just a lot of these things that people don't know about. And so, my book just kind of tells the story about how it all happened, and how we got to where we are today with our political polarization.
Oh, yeah. In 8th grade, I believe, I had to take Georgia Studies, mandated here in Georgia, and was told that the Civil War was fought over states' rights, not over slavery.
Right. Well, states' rights to keep slaves. But, yeah. And, and that's the thing, that people don't realize, that the lost cause is still very much alive in southern states, in Texas, and I'm sure in Georgia, and especially in rural areas. They're not teaching accurate history, and I think that that's a big reason why people are so angry about, their perception of what critical race theory is because what they learned in school was, that white people and, discovered America, and we built America, and we, did all these, wonderful things, but we only learn about white accomplishments. We don't learn about black accomplishments and, Native accomplishments and things like that. And so when they hear about, especially things when you use like diversity and equality, they're like, oh, no, it's teaching them that white people are bad. But no, it's not like that at all. But, I think it really just, it goes back to how prevalent the lost cause mythology was and still is in the South.
Oh, yeah. And so because you're an author now, is this your first book?
It is.
Oh,
well,
congratulations.
I'm super excited about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've attempted it, but I'm way too busy and I have too many irons in the fire, but I'm going to bounce an idea off of you. So have you heard of ResistBot?
I have.
Okay, so when you use ResistBot, and Steve, I'm not sure if you've heard of this too, you can write to your elected officials, and there's a question at the end that says, do you mind if we tweet a copy of your letter publicly, right?
Okay.
How about, for example, like Barry Loudermilk is publishing all of those letters if they are in chapters about a certain topic, because these letters tend to go in waves to your elected official about certain topics, but you could do 5 or 6 chapters on certain topics and publish it and write a book. It's basically written for you. You just have to compile it.
Right. I think that would be interesting to see, especially the people that are really, really ticked off. You might have to add some disclaimer warnings into it.
Oh, yeah. But Barry Loudermilk, he doesn't do town halls. He doesn't respond to these letters because he knows that if he does, that gets him to an argument he cannot win.
Yeah.
And so, allegedly you want to be our congressman, but you're not doing your job. So we're going to memorialize, every example of you not doing your job for you. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So think about it. I've bounced it off a couple of other authors. I don't have time. I've got too much else going on. But I think it's a viable idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
And then also for your first book, if you are able to send a copy, I will get it to the local library to donate it. And also we have a promo going on right now for the PAC. We're raising money for Falcons tickets. So if you give to the PAC, you can win Falcons tickets to, and of all games, I picked the Washington football team. So I'm not sure if you're a football fan, but the reason the Washington football team is that name is because they were formerly the Redskins. Right. So I thought it was an appropriate game to give those tickets away to. And of course, Barry Loudermilk, he doesn't spend much time in his district. He likes to spend a lot of time in D.C. So that's why that game is up for grabs if you do donate. But I'll also put your book as another prize for anybody that donates to the PAC if you are up to that, Michelle.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just send me a message with your address and stuff, and I'll send one to you. It's no problem.
Yeah, just hold off. What we'll do is we'll do an end date for that contest, and we'll do a fundraiser for both of us. And then when the winner is announced, we'll just send it directly to them. So.
Okay.
But I look forward to working with you because you have the blogging side of it. I've just got the news side and the podcast, so we can definitely team together. I like this.
Yeah, and well, the blog, it takes a lot of time too. So, I mean, this is writing. I mean, it's what I really like to do. Apparently, I'm good at it. I mean, that's what everybody tells me. I don't know. I'm not tooting my own horn or anything. But, I in Texas, there's not a lot of left-leaning, websites, news sites, blogs. But there's hundreds and hundreds of right-leaning ones. So, I've kind of found a niche, and really just focus on things that, people on the left care about, and lately what my big focus has been on is critical race theory. And I don't know if you guys have been experiencing the same thing in Georgia, but out here we've had lots and lots of angry white parents showing up at school boards demanding that they take equality and inclusion out of their curriculum because they think it's critical race theory. So I've been writing about that a lot lately.
Well, it's only an issue because Republicans told them it was an issue.
Right.
Just like abortion.
Right. And none of them, I mean, they don't understand, what it is, and they're attacking something that is not even related, and it's just kind of a messed up situation.
Well, as we say in Georgia, bless their hearts.
Yes, we say that here too.
All right, well, like I said, this is a really good conversation, and I thank you because we were able in about 45 minutes here to explain all of our 3 reasons how we came together. And I think this was really great. But, just to wrap up here, Steve, did you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, I'm just wishing you the best as you push forward, both of you, with these campaigns you're running with me at LevelField. And, honestly, I'd like to see more and more political power move towards people like the two of you in order to actually move the levers of power and modify elections and get things done. So the more podcasts like this and the more you guys can get out the word, the better.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree. And anything else to add, Michelle, from there?
No. Don't forget to vote.
Oh, do you guys have elections coming up out there?
No, we don't. But I always say that.
Well, for sure.
If you read my blog, I tell everybody to vote, in just about every blog I write, because it's so important.
Well, it's true. So what I've been doing, there is a Facebook group that's 98,000 strong. I think it's Blue Revolution, and people gripe about Republicans in there all the time. And I'm like, you know what? You just posted something about Republicans, and it had thousands of views. So you need to repost all of my podcast episodes about the Democrats that we got to get elected. Stop posting about Republicans that you hate. Start posting about the candidates to replace them, because otherwise they're not going to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
So yeah, I just start calling people out, because otherwise you're just going to get yourself all up in a tizzy and your blood pressure is going to go up, and you got to go to your doctor to get blood pressure meds, and that's not fun.
I think we're all going to start seeing that as the election day gets closer and closer, no matter what. It's going to be an important election next year, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be nonstop. Here in Georgia, we have municipal elections coming up. Those come up this fall. So all of the cities and some of the counties. So we've got that coming up here in Georgia. So.
Look,
Yeah.
I am an optimist, and I am holding my breath that For the People Act passes in the Senate. All of my state legislators went up there to make it happen. So I am rooting for them, and I am rooting for that bill.
Yeah, it will make our jobs a whole lot easier. I agree. So we got to fight for it for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. We'll get this published out this week, and we will talk for definitely soon. Thank you both.
Okay, thanks
all
for
right,
having
thank
me.
you guys.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.